Este es Ron con e de enacomputers.com otro video para ti. Oh, you'll have to excuse my mess, but this is my workbench, so to speak, although I don't really have a workbench, but whatever. I was brought this gaming computer. It's a iBuy case. This customer built this gaming machine himself. He's a younger individual. I don't normally run across customers that bring me gaming computers. And I really don't build. Well, you don't really build. I don't put together gaming computers, but a computer is a computer. But what I want to show you, this is a classic case of potentially where dust buildup is causing a problem. Now, he moved this computer from his apartment or whatever, wherever, his current premises, to his parents' house. And when he tried to turn on the computer, it would not turn on. When he brought it to me in my front office area, it powered on, but when I brought it back here the first time, it did not power on. So it's intermittent. Now, as you can see, it booted into Windows 10 just fine, but I don't want to make this video too long because these files get large. So I'm going to shut this guy down, and I'm going to see if I can reproduce this problem. So I'm not going to touch anything. I'm just going to shut it down, and then I'm going to try to power it back on. Now, when I test maybe an intermittent shutdown problem or a problem where the computer doesn't always power on, it could be ESD, it could be electrostatic discharge, but from what he told me, it sounded like it might not necessarily be that, because I think even when he moved it around in his apartment or whatever, his premises, it wouldn't always power on. So one thing you can test is you can take a computer and move it from one wall outlet to another in the same room, or you can go to an entirely different room and plug in that computer in a different circuit to test. So I'm not going to touch anything. I'm not going to unplug the power. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to press the power button and see if it will power back on, or if it will overheat, or what will it do. Is it going to work or not? It looks like the BIOS ASRock. I think Asus creates those motherboards. Is it going to boot? I just want to show it to you one time. Okay, so it did boot up. Alright, well, so let me power it off one more time. Now, even if your computer is full of dust, it will work sometimes. These could all be coincidences. Although, in my opinion at this point, I think it's the dust buildup. And I'm going to show you how much dust is built up. So this guy takes a few seconds to shut down. He's got a large sapphire graphics card with separate 6-pin power cables. And he's got a nice EVGA power supply. So he's put in some money into this computer, and these are different types of microprocessors. But alright, so I want to show you, you might be able to tell. Now this is some kind of a fan, but it has a metal, kind of a metal heatsink underneath. You see all that dust? You may not be able to tell. I can tell right away. I could tell right away with my naked eye that is a lot of dust. I'm going to pull it and I'm going to show it to you. So I think it's probably just 4 screws. Again, I've got a mess because this is my work area, and so I don't care if it's messy. But I try to keep it. I think 3 screws. He did mention a missing screw. I thought it was maybe the top fan. There's a fan up there, but if you look at it, yeah, it's got some dust, but it's not really clogged. I might clean that out for him, I might not. I just don't know. If I can get the fan out real quick, I'll probably clean the fan out. I don't use chemicals, but I do use water. I take the fan out and I run it under hot water. I don't use soap or chemicals, but I do make sure I let it dry. You want to make sure you let the fans dry. I also clean heat sinks that way too, believe it or not. But you might want to make sure that you let the fans and heat sinks dry, because electricity and water do not mix in physics. So it looks like it's just probably 3 screws that hold this heat sink slash fan. I don't put together gaming machines, and I very rarely get customers that bring me gaming computers. Usually, from my understanding and experiences, if a person is capable of building a computer, putting it together, getting it to boot, loading the operating system, installing video games, most likely they can probably troubleshoot most things, everything else themselves. But, you know, here, longer screws here. 2 of them are really long. The other one was short. So now I'm going to pull this fan out, and I want to show you the dust buildup. So that fan, I have to remember that. So even on the back side, look, it's got dust buildup, but especially there, look. You see all that dust and grime? Let me move the fan. You see right there, that is caked on dust. Now normally, this is some kind of a heat sink, or it's almost like a radiator. This could be, again, I don't build these type of computers. This could be liquid cooled. I sound like I'm ignorant, which I am, but I sound like I'm stupid. But this is probably liquid cooled, and this is actually a radiator. It's just, I don't make these kind of computers, and I never get customers like this. So this is probably what this is liquid cooled, but whatever. Anyways, this looks like a radiator, but look at all that dust build up. Look at that. Normally, the radiator should look like this. You see here on this video card, you see how these are fins, and you don't want to bend them. You don't want to bend them either. If they get bent, this is physics. This is a way to deal with heat, because microprocessors and even GPU, graphical processing units, they get extremely hot. And one way to try to deal with all the heat buildup is to have, like, you know, a heat sink, which is kind of like a radiator in an automobile. Well, these gaps are intentional. You see the little gap between the pieces of metal? That's intentional so that there's airflow. If they get bent, then there's less airflow. And so this is normal. Now there is a little bit of dust, but that's not enough to cause this to overheat. But this would be normal. This is what this should look like. That should look more like that. Now that's a different type of a radiator, a different type of a grill, but you should be able to see through that instead of, look at all that dust built up. On this section right here, it's caked on. See how thick that is? Over here too, you see how it's caked? I don't know if you can tell. You see how the dust is thicker in some areas than others? That's because it's starting to cake up and it gets clogged, and there's no airflow, and so it just keeps piling on top of each other. I'm not judging this customer at all. They don't do this for a living, but they will learn from this. Now this customer is a little bit different. He called me up. He wanted a quote. Now this fan has dust, but that's not enough to clog it. But you know, that should be cleaned out. He wanted a quote and on how much I would charge for diagnostics. I only charge $25 just to take a look at a computer. I do charge a price. Some computer repair technicians, they don't charge anything. It's free, but the reason why that's not how I roll, is because customers will use you. They'll bring you their computers and you'll diagnose it and you'll tell them what's wrong, and then they'll take their computer, and guess what? You just wasted time. You didn't get compensation. To me, I'm not a capitalist, but you must always try to get compensated for your time and labor. Otherwise, you end up outside. You end up outside there at a McDonald's on a little laptop, uploading videos to YouTube because you have no other recourse. Or you have to go get a job. You have to go outside and go work for the government and the military and become a bitch. You know what I'm saying? No. So, but I think $25, I could probably even charge 40. Some techs charge 50. This customer told me that on the other he took his computer somewhere 2 years ago and now they charge $80 just to diagnose it. Geek Squad charges $100 just to look at your computer. That to me is excessive, but I do charge something. Now, since this customer just wanted a diagnostic, I will tell him, I could even send him pictures, and I'll say, look, your radiator is, caked with dust. Do you want me to fix it for you? If he says yes, I might charge him my full $80 fee, if not a little bit less, because I don't have to do much. So I just want to show you this is an excellent example of what can happen with dust. And it's very common. Even though I would say, though, the rest of the computer looks just fine. I mean, yeah, this hard drive, he didn't really mount it. But as a technician, be aware of that, because you don't want to damage anything and they'll blame you for it. Maybe he couldn't fit it up here. I don't know. But as far as dust buildup everywhere else, it looks pretty good. He's got a fan in the front. The front grill looks good over there. And as far as he's got an SSD drive. He's got multiple SATA drives. As far as dust buildup, even the power supply isn't too caked on, but I am going to clean that out. You can even take like a sock. I would not use a household vacuum cleaner to clear the dust. You can just do this, but you do want to suck in the dust out of there. Or you could, on this one, you could take a canned air. Although canned air, I never buy it. It's a waste of money. It doesn't last long. They're not very powerful, but you could if you wanted to. Whereas this, to me, probably one of those shop vacs. Don't use a household vacuum cleaner. The tools can damage shit in the components and electrostatic discharge. But I would say a shop vac or an air compressor. Actually, an air compressor, in my opinion, is the most productive thing to use to blow out air. Now, you have to be careful but you can get nozzles that are smaller that control the amount of air that gets blown out. But if you can control the amount of air, use an air compressor. They work really good. You just take the computer outside and blow out all the dust. Overall, I would say it looks pretty good, except for that fan, but especially this guy. Look at that. That is caked on. Most times when I get now, if you notice, it's in certain areas where it's really caked on. If the entire radiator was that caked on compared to by my thumb, I don't see how this computer would boot up. But in my opinion, that might be what's causing this issue, where sometimes it'll boot up, sometimes it won't. And it could be because it's overheating because of this dust buildup, or it could be a coincidence, or it could be part of the problem. So I need to run because these video files on this Android get quite large and they take a lot longer to upload to YouTube. Classic case of dust buildup on, I'm assuming this is a radiator or a heat sink. The large metal heat sinks on desktop computers. This doesn't have another one. I don't have here, let me show you. I've got this motherboard right here. Now you see the fan and you see the heat sink underneath it, the metal heat sink. These are notorious for dust buildup. They get caked on. You see how it's caked on right there? You will notice that on a desktop motherboard with an average heat sink. See how there's gaps between the pieces of metal for airflow? Well, when that gets clogged with dust, then your computer's going to suffer. Adios.